Hello viewers, and welcome back to Phil's Garage for part 2 of this GS750 petrol tank restoration. If you watch part 1, you'll know that there is a tank on my 77 GS750 that I restored some years ago, but I was never quite happy with the paint job. So I've been sort of looking around for another tank to do as a bit of a project to see if I can get another one looking a lot better. Found one on eBay. It arrived. The outside is a bit rough, but the inside's actually in pretty good condition. So yeah, we're just working our way through getting this tank back to looking quite good. In the last episode, I filled it full of vinegar, just to treat any rust that might be starting inside there, but it still looks pretty good inside. So the vinegar's inside, so we'll empty that out, put some WD-40 in there to stop it rusting, and then we'll start looking at the outside of the tank and fixing dents, treating some rust on the outside, all that sort of thing. So let's get on with it. So while I'm waiting for the tank to process the rust converter and the vinegar, etc., might as well start on this petcock. It's a bit jammed at the moment, but because it's a genuine Suzuki one, as I said, that's good. So let's pull it apart. There are kits available to refurbish these, but we'll see what we've got in here and see whether it works. Now the issue with the aftermarket cheap ones from eBay is that what I found on 2 occasions when I bought them is that when you apply the vacuum to here, yes, it certainly does flow when it's turned on, but when the vacuum is released, it doesn't stop flowing, it just keeps flowing. So that would then eventually just overflow your carburetors if you left that on. So the whole idea of having the vacuum is that the fuel doesn't flow when the vacuum's not applied, which means the engine's not running. But yeah, I've tried buying these aftermarket ones twice, and in both cases did exactly the same thing and fiddled around with them for ages and could never get it to work. So okay, so I'll take this valve out. So there's an O-ring in here and O-rings down in there. This tube does actually come out, but we might force that. Okay, let's take the back off. And then I'll clean the individual bits and see if we can get it to work properly. But yeah, we may end up buying a kit for this. I mean, that gasket there comes with the cheap Chinese one, so I could at least use that. So there are some parts off the cheap Chinese things that you can use. I mean, they're not very expensive, but compared to the genuine Suzuki ones, but so they shouldn't be. Okay. Ooh, there you go. All right. Now I've got to be careful not to rip anything here. There's a little diaphragm in here. Okay, let's try and separate that. There you go. So not to rip this diaphragm. So it might take a little bit more to get that off. All right, I might investigate that a bit closer so that we don't damage that piece, which might be actually usable. So let me just do a bit of microsurgery on that, and then I'll get back to you. Right, well, I managed to get that off. So this is sort of a weird, it's got a double membrane on each side of this hard piece, and that's what moves backwards and forwards with the vacuum to open and close the little valve seat in there. So I think that looks all right. Anyway, we will try just cleaning this up and putting it back together and seeing if it works correctly. So as I say, on prime, fuel should come out of here. On reserve or on, fuel should only come out of here if there's a vacuum applied, which sucks this diaphragm back and lets fuel through. And then, as I say, this little spring here, then once the vacuum is removed, should push that back in there and seal that off so the fuel stops running. But anyway, let's give that a clean with some fuel. Maybe give it a blast in the sandblaster and see if we can get it operating nicely. As you saw, I took apart the petcock into individual pieces. Gave it a bit of a clean and some fuel, but I think probably the next step is to give it a run in the ultrasonic cleaner. So what I've done is, so there's hot water in there, so I boiled a kettle and put the hot water in there, and then the parts are actually sitting in a plastic tub of petrol. And I find that that works really well. That's sort of bubbling away because it's boiling, I guess. But anyway, we'll start the ultrasonics and let it run for 25 minutes. So here's all the bits off the tank with a little bit of a clean. That petrol cover flap, I will probably sandblast that and give it a good coat of paint, along with a couple of the others. The ultrasonics on the fuel petcock didn't seem to do such a great job. So I think what I'm going to do is just slap it back together, put it through the sandblaster, and then take it apart again just to make sure there's no sand, and then put it back together. I've ordered a kit which includes the various rubbers and things, but I'll put it back together for now and see how it goes. So let's do that. Petcock after cleaning it again afterwards, get all the sand out. Used a couple of bits off the cheap and nasty petcock that I got from eBay. So some of those screws, that little plate. I'll use this rubber gasket as well. So that's probably ready to go back on. I'll see how it goes when we put fuel in it. If it leaks, as I said, I've got the refurb kit coming for it, so that was fairly cheap. So if we need to use that, we will. So the tank is sat overnight up the right way with the 10 litres of vinegar in there. So I've turned it up this way, and I'll leave that for the rest of the day until tomorrow morning. That leak that was coming out was coming from the little flat plate that I made to cover up where the petcock goes. So there's a flat steel plate and then a cork gasket underneath. But yeah, these screw holes go right through to the tank, so you have to use special bonded washers or doughty washers on here. So they're a washer that has a rubber seal around the thread, so that the liquid can't work its way down the thread and come out, which is what was happening. So put some doughty washers under here, and that fixed the problem. There's been no other leaks, so that's always a good sign. So yeah, we'll leave that overnight and then empty it out. And I did get some WD-40. So it's recommended that once you empty out the vinegar, then you give it a rinse with water, and then put some WD-40 in it and slosh that around, and that stops the further surface rust developing, until you start using it. Right, so that's been sitting upside down like that overnight. I noticed just this morning it started leaking through the petrol cap, which it wasn't doing yesterday, but anyway. So what we do now is empty out all that vinegar, and then fill it up full of water and rinse it, empty that out, and then dry it before we put some WD-40 in it. So let's do that. Take off my little panel here. Oh, come on, you bastard. Oh. Okay, so I'll empty this out and recover all of the vinegar. Take the lid off. Should clean out a bit of gunk, any gunk that was inside the tank as well. So I might filter that and put it back in the bottles for use at some other time. So as you can see, there was some bits of gunk in the bottom of the tank, but still in very good condition. So now I will turn it upside down, put that little plate back on, and then fill it up full of water and rinse it out. Right, so I've rinsed this out with water 3 times, got a fair bit of yucky sort of rusty stuff out. The 3rd time it was quite clear, so I think the inside of the tank is quite good now. So now what I'm going to do is I've got bought this this tub of WD-40. So I've got about, I don't know, maybe a cup and a half. So I'm just going to pour that in and slosh that around, and then that should stop the fresh steel from oxidizing again. So we'll give that a bit of a shake. I've obviously got the plug in the bottom there. But yes, as I say, the inside of this tank is remarkably good considering what the outside of the tank looks like. And now that the inside is sort of all completed, then we can concentrate on the outside, which, as you can see, needs a fair bit of work. I'm just trying to get it all coated on the inside there. Obviously you've got that big hump in the middle, so you really need to slosh things around to get it up on that hump, otherwise it'll just sit in the bottom. So yeah, the inside of the tank should be safe now, and we can concentrate on fixing this rust on the outside and getting it back to bare metal, pulling out a few little dings, and then treating this. I've put rust converter on these bits. I did notice there's another bit underneath which I'll need to do. And then what I plan to do is paint it before sanding with this POR 15, which I used on I bought this for a tank that I did years ago that was so bad I had to cut the bottom of the tank out, clean it out, and then weld it back in. And then I used this to seal up the little pinholes and stuff. So still had that, and it's still usable. So I'll use that over the top of the rusty bits before I sand it finally, before putting some etch primer on it, then primer, then color. So yeah, on to the next bit. Right, now that the inside is done, it's onto the outside, and I think what I'm going to do next is strip all the paint off. So take it back to bare metal so that I can see exactly what I'm dealing with, treat any rust spots, dents and things like that, and then move on from there. So I've tried a few methods using a heat gun, or just a wire brush, then a wire brush with a heat gun, then a wire brush with a little gas torch. But I think what I'm going to do is use paint stripper. So a bit messy, but I think that sort of has the least amount of impact on the tank itself, rather than using gas torches and things. So I'll get on with that. So this is the results after one go with the paint stripper. So getting down to this white base, which is a bit weird because I don't think these bikes ever came out in white, so there must be a respray from somebody previous, I guess. Anyway, let's have another go. Okay, there's after two goes with the paint stripper. I think I might just do one more and then finish it off with the wire brush. But yeah, making good progress. Right, after a lot of elbow grease and wire brushing, that's pretty much all the paint off. So you can see there's a bit of surface rust here and there. So the next thing to do is to put some rust converter on the worst bits and leave that for 6 hours.
Many hours later.
So the rust converter that I've put on the rusty bits on the bottom there have had a chance to do their business and been drying for about 6 hours. So what I plan to do now is give it a good scrub with wax and grease remover, dry it off completely, and then spray it with etch primer, and that will at least stop the bottom of it from rusting. Right, well, that's now been cleaned and sprayed with etch primer. Came up all right, so we'll leave that overnight, and tomorrow morning what I plan to do is start working on the top, which would be cleaning the surface rust that's appeared, and then using the POR 15 on the rusty bits, and then let that dry. So progress is being made. Okay, it's next morning and that's looking good. So the next step is to turn it over, and going to use the POR 15 on the surface rust on the top of the tank. Right, well, all of the POR 15 that I've put on there is dried. It dries really rock solid. So it's very good for this type of work, certainly fuel resistance, etc. There was a tiny little pinhole here, which I was worried about initially, which was a bit of like a rust hole, which initially wasn't leaking, but eventually when I turned the tank onto this side, I could see a little bit of weeping from the WD-40 that's inside. So the POR 15 has sealed that up really nicely. So that should be fine. So what do we do now? What we're on to now is to try and fix the dings in the tank. So there's a few. There's this one here, which is quite sort of sharp, so I'm not quite sure what hit that, but anyway, we'll see if we can get that out. There's a bit of a, I'm not sure whether you can see it, but there's a bit of a ding here, which we can probably sort out. There's a tiny little one here, and then this little thing here. So apart from that, it's pretty straight. So I can probably ones like this I will just fill, I think. But what I have is this thing here, which is a spot nailer. So it's basically got a spot welder, and it welds these nails onto the surface, and then you can use this puller here to pull the dent out, so that you don't have to use as much bog as just filling the hole completely. So I'm going to try and do some of that. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this this big flat bit here first. Flat dent, the center's about there. So this is plugged in. We stick one of these nails in, stick that, push that down onto the surface, and give it a quick probably only a quarter of a second or something like that, and that sticks that on there. Then we got to get the puller, which is here. That slides down on this. I'll tighten that up on it. And then can start pulling that dent out. Let's undo that. Oop. I dropped the tank fill. It's come out a little bit. So I'll work a bit more on that, maybe using some extra nails, and see if we can get that nice and flat. I mean, there'll still be a little bit of putty that needs to go in, but certainly a lot less than doing that whole area. So hopefully you can see that that's much better than it was. It's still slightly low here. So once you've done your pull, then you simply just cut this nail off, and then file it flat. So I might get rid of this one, put another one in there, and just do a couple of little taps just to bring that out. But it's working quite well. Right, well, that was the worst dent. That was actually dented in quite sort of steep and sharp. So I managed to get the sort of the center of the dent out. That's probably about as far as I'll go. I'd had to heat that area up a fair bit to get it to pull out, but it's reasonably sort of flat now. So I think rather than go any further, I think I'll just fill that little bit up with this one over here. Came out quite nicely. So this one here I probably won't bother with. I might give it a go, but we'll see. I might just fill that. It's only a tiny dent. Should be okay. So this is to strip all the paint off the top of the tank and see where I'm at. Okay, well, that's probably a good point to finish part 2 of this video series on the GS750 tank. Making some good progress. What have we done? We pulled apart the petcock and gave that a good clean and put it back together. Hopefully that doesn't need a kit put through it, but we do have a kit if we need it. We stripped the bottom of the tank back to bare metal and then sprayed that with etch primer. We also finished treating the inside of the tank with the vinegar and then rinsed it out and then put a bit of WD-40 in there and sloshed that around. So that should keep that nice inside. And then the top of the tank, we started to strip a bit of the paint back, put some rust converter on the rust and POR 15, and then pulled out a couple of small dents with the spot nailer. So yeah, making good progress. The next step is to strip that top of the tank right back to bare metal, fill it with putty, try and make it flat, and then etch primer and then undercoat to get it ready for colour at some point. So yeah, making good progress. So thanks for watching. If you like this, give us a like or maybe a subscribe, and we'll see you in episode 3 where we start to think about putting some colour on this tank. Bye for now.